And this was a result of an evolution, not a revolution, where some of the first ideas I had included a motor attached to 3D printed pulleys with ribbed, like a belt. And so the motor would drive the belt, which would have over here, it had like this thing with skateboard bearings and a shaft, and the pull, the belt would spin it. And I got to thinking about it. I said, and it was not very stable. It was kind of, as you can imagine, kind of loose. So I decided on this design here, which is just a motor, which I got for $19, and it's very quiet. And everything else 3D printed, except for obviously the stuff over here. This was about $12, a pulse width modulated motor speed controller. And this here, inside here, I've got a stack of neodymium N58 magnets on each side. And these are opposite poles. And I printed them inside that thing by first, because this would have been upside down. So it was printing with the holes coming up. And when it got tall enough, I would pause the print. I would use, I used epoxy. I epoxied the magnets inside so that they wouldn't jump out when the print head was moving over them. And then it printed everything else on top. So it's all solid, all the way around, which is good because you want it that way. And, no bearings or anything, directly on the shaft of the motor. And I'll show you it without the lid on it. Of course, there's no speed showing, but you can hear how quiet it is. I mean, and that right there would be enough to spin pretty much anything I think you could throw at it. But it goes a lot faster, but it starts to vibrate because it's on this project board. And let me get the lid put on there, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so now the lid's on. I have this guards, these, it's like a guardrail. It's got 4 posts, and it's got a circle that inserts into here, and then you put your beaker or whatever in there so it can't, it's like a guardrail for it. That was the best I could come up with at the time, although I'm sure there might be, well, there's a lot of different ways you could redo this project for sure, but as it is, it fits my needs. And I built it to spin vape juice. So I'm spinning liquid that is very viscous. It's about usually 80% vegetable glycerin and 20% propylene glycol. So it's very thick. And this will, in a beaker that's about, this tall, it'll spin a vortex deep enough to expose the magnetic pill to fresh air. So this thing works. So this is by far a much more solid design. And I've got the Hall effect sensor on there taking pulses only on the one side of the magnet. So it's every pulse is 1 RPM, or 1 rotation, I should say. And this is giving us RPMs. You can see it starts to vibrate as it gets faster. But that could be, fixed. By the way, this is threading, the lid you can see is threaded there. And so that I got it so that it screws down to where the clearance between the inside here and the top of this is very, very short. Very short. So it gets a good grip on the magnetic pill that spins the liquid. Okay, I'm going to show you how to slice this thing because there's a trick to it. And the first thing you got to do when you load it in is you need to rotate it. And I found the best way to do that is to just use this. Just type in 180 degrees, sets it upside down. Then, however your slicer settings are or whatever, you just slice it. And then, of course, this is Prussia, which I guess you can see. So what you got to do is you got to find the layer. So if you see how those circles come up, and then they start gradually coming inward. See how they do that? So you got to get right before that point, which is right there, layer 73. Right click, add a pause, insert magnets.
Okay, so now when it prints, it's gonna stop there, and of course you got to leave it on the platform. You don't want to move it, and you want to put in the magnets so that the polarity is opposite on each side. So north on this side, south on this side, or vice versa. You got to use that 5-minute epoxy, and then when you resume the print, well, you got to wait for the epoxy to set first. Otherwise, see what'll happen is if you don't, then the print head will take the magnets out of the thing. So, but when they're set with the epoxy, then it'll just print the next layer and it'll kind of seal them in a gradual type way, and then it'll finish this off. And you'll have some nice sealed magnets. And these things are extremely strong. I mean, yeah, you're not going to have any problem with this setup.